Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Insider wouldn't be surprised if one Steelers QB gets extended before season. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been busy addressing their quarterback situation during the 2024 NFL offseason. They have added two potential starters in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and even brought in a new third QB in Kyle Allen. None of them are currently under contract past the 2024 season. It looks like that could change before the season begins. In a chat for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Jerry Dulac was asked if the Steelers would work on the contract situations for Wilson or Fields before the season begins. He said the team won't be working on a deal for Wilson until next offseason, but he wouldn't be surprised if they got something done with Fields. They won't during the season. They'll revisit Wilson after the season. That is the intention of both parties. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something sooner with Fields. The Steelers are set at QB for the 2024 season. Whether it's Fields or Wilson that is the starter next season, the Steelers are going to be getting better play out of the position than they did in 2023. From there, things get a bit murky. Wilson is coming off of two of the toughest seasons of his career and is currently 35 years old. That makes it difficult to try and plan a team's future around him. Meanwhile, Fields has had struggles of his own during his 3 years in the league and is only under contract until the end of the 2024 season. The team could decide to pick up the fifth-year option on his contract, but with just under a month left to make that decision, it seems unlikely that is the path they will take. With no QB currently under contract for the Steelers beyond next season, it makes a lot of sense for the Steelers to get an extension for Fields done before the season begins. Fields has been far from a perfect QB since making the jump to the NFL, but he is probably the best option the Steelers have right now. Fields has been inconsistent throwing the ball over the last 3 years, but he has still shown that he is a dynamic threat at QB. He ran for 1,143 yards in 2022 and averaged just over 50 rushing yards per game in 2023. Fields has also shown some improvement throwing the ball from year to year. More importantly, the Steelers just aren't going to have many other options. We saw what happened when Ben Roethlisberger retired. The team got desperate and drafted Kenny Pickett in round 1. If they leave themselves without a QB after 2024, they could once again find themselves getting desperate again in the 2025 draft. Unfortunately, the Steelers are a good enough team that they probably aren't going to be set up to get one of the top QBs in next year's draft. That would leave them once again needing to decide if they are going to reach on a prospect just to fill the need. Instead, they could give themselves a fighting chance with Fields and work out a deal that is more team-friendly than whatever they might have to agree to if Fields becomes their starter in 2024 and looks good for them. It's not a perfect situation for the Steelers to be in, but working out an extension for Fields while his value is low is a move that could work out very well for the organization. 5 for Friday, taking a look at first-round values. With April now upon us, it's time to turn full attention to the NFL Draft, which will be held at the end of this month. A question that is often asked is which position is the safest to pick in the first round? Looking back at the 5-year stretch between 2018 through 2022, we can get a better idea of what positions are considered safer picks and which are not. We also get an idea of what positions the NFL values. In those 5 drafts from 2018 through 2022, the positions that saw the most players selected were wide receiver and offensive tackle with 20 each. Cornerback was second with 19 selected, while quarterback and linebacker tied for third with 18 each. Defensive tackle had 13, safety and guard 8 each, running back 6, center 5 and tight end 4. So, obviously, the NFL values pass catchers, pass protectors, pass coverage players and passers in general. Of course, that also could just simply be how some of those drafts set up with the available talent. So, let's take a deeper look into how many players at each of those respective positions actually hit. By hit, I take into consideration if they're a regular starter either for the team that selected them or for another team that acquired them via a trade or free agency. Baker Mayfield is an outlier in this situation. He wound up being traded by Cleveland, then bounced around to a couple of different teams before becoming a starter again last season for Tampa Bay. He can't be considered a hit, particularly because he was the first player selected in his draft. By those standards, quarterbacks hit on 10 of 18 occasions, a number that is skewed by the 2020 draft class of Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert and Jordan Love. Take that group out of the equation, and the QB hit rate over that 5-year period is just 6 of 14. At running back, the hit rate in the first round is 4 of 6, including the Steelers' selection of Najee Harris. The two busts were Kansas City's selection of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Seattle's pick of Rashad Penny. But if you take a running back in the first round, more often than not, he provides solid play. At wide receiver, the success rate is better at 13 of 20, a 65% success rate that matches that of offensive tackle, which also hit on 13 of 20 selections. The best hit rate lies on the interior offensive line. Of the 8 guards taken in that time period, 7 are considered solid or at least average starters, while that number sits at 4 for 5 for the centers. That's excellent. At tight end, the hit rate is 2 of 4, with Kyle Pitts and T.J. Hawkinson being the hits and Noah Fant and Hayden Hurst counting as misses, even though they're both fine as NFL players. Defensive tackle also has a solid hit rate, with 9 of the 13 players being hits. Defensive end also has a solid hit rate with 12 of 18 players at that position being solid players, while the hit rate at linebacker is 10 of 18, though that includes both inside and outside linebackers. The hit rate on inside linebackers is much less than that of their counterparts on the outside. The cornerback hit rate is 10 of 19, while the hit rate at safety is 6 of 8, including Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was a 2018 first-round pick of the Dolphins before being traded to the Steelers. Nobody would argue that Fitzpatrick hasn't worked out. Why does all of this matter? In this year's draft, the strength is at offensive tackle and wide receiver, 2 positions that we've seen heavily hit in recent years. It's also good at cornerback, and, of course, there will be a number of quarterbacks selected in the first round, as well. History tells us the hit rate at some of those positions will be safer than others. Fittipaldo, Steelers could be looking at another trade-up scenario for Taliese. Could the Pittsburgh Steelers trade up for a tackle 2 years in a row if a first-round option like Taliese slips in their range? Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette couldn't help considering it on 93.7 The Fan on Thursday. Fuaga showed up at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex a couple weeks back for a pre-draft visit. The Steelers also sent offensive line coach Pat Meyer to attend at his Oregon State Pro Day. The Steelers have obvious interest in him, but it's not obvious he'll be available at their draft slot. As Fittipaldo pointed out, this is a deep group of tackles this year, and Fuaga is one of the prospects fluctuating in rankings. Many draft analysts are struggling to rank these prospects, who exhibit different strengths and weaknesses. The odds are good that teams' rankings this year vary more than they usually do, which should make for some interesting moments during the draft. Teams are going to want to make sure that they secure their guys, so they'll risk the move up. And I could see Fuaga being the Steelers' guy. I think they had Broderick Jones as their guy a year ago, at least among realistic options. And as you surely remember, they traded up from 17 to 14 in order to take him. It's possible that Fuaga lasts until the 20th pick, where the Steelers select this year. But he can just as easily find his new team at 15, if not sooner. A team may like him enough to take him in the top 10. You only need one team to like one player enough for those sorts of things to happen. Of course, Fuaga isn't the only tackle in the first round. The Steelers have frequently been paired with Georgia's Amarius Mims, who is far less polished but has insane upside. they brought him in for a pre-draft visit as well, and they obviously have intel on him. Jones, George Pickens, and Darnell Washington all played with him at Alabama. Right tackle is the favorite position for the Steelers to draft in the first round, but it's not set in stone. Especially if the board breaks poorly for them, they could just as easily take a center like Jackson Powers Johnson. Less likely but possible targets are wide receiver, defensive line, and cornerback, maybe even quarterback, just in case. And you, fan, what do you think of the situation of Taliese? Leave your opinion in the comments.